Just a bit of summary as to what the Agent's Edge is about. So this is the first of a series of webinars that we intend to do. And it is to provide the real estate industry with insights and information, but also with tips on the continuing evolution of tech within the property industry internationally. Of course, I'll do that through a process of conducting interviews, talking about trends and areas of the industry that are shaping the future of how we as agents will provide services to our customers. And hopefully that'll provide some real practical solutions and some outcomes. In this first episode, I get to talk about the emerging technologies, evolving customer expectations, future of the digital agent, and also how tech is changing the landscape for buyers and sellers. And I am very, very glad to say that I'm joined in our first episode by a great man who is also a contributor to the industry, but also a great friend, and that is a household name in real estate, Lee Woodward, who is the founder of Lee Woodward Training Systems. He's the designer, producer, editor, presenter of multimedia education for progressive real estate agents, leaders, and businesses, and also the author of the Complete Salesperson course and multiple books. Lee, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Pete, and welcome to everyone. Great to be here.
Yeah, great. You should give us a bit of a summary, if you don't mind, of how your 2023 has started, because we've had quite a different year to 2022. Been a lot that's been happening, and you've been right at the coalface talking to agents and principals, doing training and coaching and all those sort of things. How's all that been?
Yeah, Pete, it's been absolutely amazing. And obviously, even the last 3 years being with Realtair, doing the work there of digital. We weren't allowed out in the training rooms. Actually, I was trapped in here through COVID, if anyone was looking for me, in the multimedia set. And that was interesting, Pete. We talk about change and technology, and no one saw COVID coming. And for companies like my own, it was like, you can't go out. You're not allowed to go out and do the work you did. No different to a real estate agent who couldn't get in the door, can't get on the lawn, can't do an auction. And when you are shut down like that, you've got to find another way. And I think the greatest thing about COVID was it taught everyone to think very fast on your feet. And whatever you believe is the way you used to do it, if that is stopped, what it was, and Melbourne was hit harder than any of our members around the country, you had to find another way. And suddenly technology was the only way to communicate. It was the only way to transact real estate. And I don't think any of us saw that coming. And then for this year, it's been back in the opposite of back into the training rooms, human connection, people wanting to get around people to discuss what it is they're going to do moving forward. Because I think a lot of people got caught out of step there, and you couldn't just collaborate as you normally would.
It's interesting though, isn't it, that like, as you know, Lee, that we were, I guess, out sort of talking about tech, and tech kind of luckily, I think, evolved to that point just pre-COVID where there was enough of it that made sense to the process that when COVID came, it actually provided some really, really strong value. And we're going to talk a little bit about emerging technology, but I guess the thing that you and I have always talked about is this reference of tech with technique. You've been a very hard person to get a hold of because you've been so inundated with business owners, with agents that are saying, look, there is this technology, it's great. How do we use it better to ensure that we can provide better service, minimize our costs? That's a big issue right at the moment, ensuring that there's efficiency also in that process.
Yeah, what an interesting thing. You're right about the efficiencies. Anyone right now needs a high impact, low risk model, because without that, you could get caught out again. And the efficiency of an agency today is just unbelievable. And I think the cloud-based agent, although a lot of them were forced to learn those skills, would never go back to, I'll do it when I get back to the office. If you can't do it in real time where you are now, you must be out of step because the consumer is receiving it in real time. So the fact they can make an offer, they can make a bid, they can view a property, do a video tour. They're not going to some center to do that. They've got it all on their phone. That's the game now. Can I communicate to the customer, the final person, for the full transaction, even taking a deposit, which a lot of people don't even know that's even going on, where a consumer's putting in their own BSB and account number on a link that's been authenticated through the platform and paying their deposit. We never thought that would have happened, versus Monday morning in a real estate business, support come in and go, there's $500,000 in the trust account. Does anyone know where it's from? And that concern would happen. So I think the device has just become the center of all transactions now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the thing is that we've always talked about, there's been lots of communication around the fact that, really a consumer expectation is all of those things you've described. An agent's got to be able to do that from anywhere on any device. And whether it's through the prospecting side of their business or it's right to the other end of the transaction that you just described and the receiving of the deposit, which is, look, it's a really simple process for an agent to do, but it just is such a value add to the customer, simply because from their side, they've got a secure way of being able to pay a deposit, and they've also got a secure way as a seller to be able to receive the balance of that, where there's been a lot of issues. But I know that you've been out in the field a lot and you've been seeing a lot of the tech that's in use, and one of your major mantras is about, just having tech is one thing, but making sure you implement is another. What are some of the headline pieces of tech that you're seeing that are really valuable for agents right now?
Well, without doubt, the biggest impact that we've seen is in training and technology, Pete. You and I have to ask a question every day, otherwise we're unemployed, and that is, what are we fixing? And the first big tackle for everyone was, well, everyone absolutely hated the prospecting process, what they were doing. They were sending out stuff, but you don't know what's going on. It wasn't working. And in the last 12 months, claiming doors became that big theme. And for those that haven't been through that work that we've done with that, you drive down a street and you see a house you've sold, that's got your brand on it. And then that vendor purchased a house somewhere else off a competitor. That's still your door. It's over there. And claiming doors, you need 900 doors to get 46 transactions a year. That's always been the science behind it. But then the price update becoming the tool that it did, and for those that the pitch platform to do that, most people were using it just for their digital introductions and pre-listing kit. But when the button went on book and appraisal, the game changed. I think last month, Pete, it was like 38,000 doors across the country was claimed. And on the tech side, that's amazing because that's one-to-one prospecting. But from the training side, we're able to teach, okay, now you can make calls off the rebound. And they go, what's that? Well, instead of coming in each day and ringing 100 people for no reason, call off the rebound. So getting those out, getting the notification, you're calling off the rebound, you've warmed up the data, which is the whole significant difference, that making that phone call, Pete, I sent you a price update the other day. Did you receive it? Now, the fact I know you did and you've opened it 3-4 times is a benefit, but suddenly the person knows why I'm calling. Whereas today, Pete, without that sort of sequence to the work, you can ring people so much today, you'll lose the business. The communication channels have changed, and how people expect to be communicated with is actually quite private. So if you're ringing me off guard, I don't know why, whoa, what's this about? It's very, very different to what it was 3 years ago.
You don't want to overdo it. You don't also want to underdo it at the same time. In that as well, I guess, because you've got the ability to create sort of digital prospecting. And then, as you mentioned as well, you've also got the ability to be able to create proposals and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that there aren't too many agents today that aren't operating off a digital signatory platform or using a digital workflow to maintain all the documentation and all the complexity around the compliance around all those sort of things. That would be something that I'm sure that you're seeing in every single one of your businesses that you're dealing with and salespeople that you're talking to.
You think it would be, but it's not. The ones with efficiency doing really well, got a strong pipeline coming through. There's no coincidence to that. They've claimed the doors, they've tagged it in digital so that they know if it's going to be opened, it's a response. So there's a digital connection. Then there's a lot of people thinking, no, I'm just going to pump stuff out there and everyone loves me and they'll come back to me. I don't think so. That's a bonus if they come back to you because they remember you. But everyone needs some sort of connection to remind themselves that that was you, because a lot of people forget the person they even purchased the property of. If I had to bring to the audience's attention, the biggest leakage in the real estate industry right now, and this is interesting, Pete. We're in a time right now where everyone's saying, geez, we're short of stock. Things are really tight. And I go, are we short of stock or did we suffer from leakage? And they say, what do you mean? How many established clients do you have? Don't know. So that means you don't have an established client program. You haven't tagged that door, yet you're also in the same sentence to me saying it's really tough out there. But you've ignored the customer. You've ignored those people. And it's not even that the person who's your established client needs to sell. It's that they need to talk about you as an advocate when somebody else says, oh, we're moving overseas. We've got to get the property on the market. Call Pete Matthews. But without that connection to the door, there is no response. And then you're going to cold call till you die, because chasing strangers would be a huge error right now.
Love the ones you're with. Like, we spend all this time, effort and energy trying to find new customers, and we've got acres of diamonds of those already in the CRM, or they're on the phone or whatever it might be. But it sounds to me like if agents are going to move down that whole digital path to become a genuine digital agent, which, I guess, let's be frank, is probably the consumer expectation given what we've just been through over the last few years, unless he's kind of starting at the very basic level, which everything that you just talked about then, it kind of took me back to, like, I've been doing this for 33 years, similar to you, Lee, and you go, this is the same thing we've been talking about for 30 years. The difference is, though, you've actually got tools that you can manage the customer relationship so much better. You've got tools that allow you to be able to centrally see everything that you're doing on a particular property and everything that you're doing with a particular customer. It's all there. It's just the reality is it's going to be used and used wisely.
That's the future of real estate because the consumer loves it, not because the agent thinks it's good or not, but consumers have really taken to register me. I want to be notified. I don't need you to call me and say there's another buyer. I want to see there's other buyers. And I love that point that no one can get angry at a system. So if 75 notifications have gone out, the marketplace has spoken. It is worth more than I thought versus the opinion of the agent. And in my entire 30 years in real estate, Pete, I've wanted the harmony between the consumer and the agent because it hasn't been there because it was never transparent enough to know, is that real of what's been saying? But with Jason there, he went out to the marketplace with his new conversation. By the way, did you know we could do this? Nobody else has mentioned that to me. And just winning business is hard enough. To have a technique and, the fact he's done some study there to bring an extra option to the consumer makes him the better choice. And it didn't take long to learn that. We get the listing conversation right. And suddenly you're out there in the lounge rooms sounding like a modern real estate agent versus you guys are all the same. You do the same thing. We're just going to go with the cheapest. That just makes me want to train even harder. I want to hear there was no comparison between you and the others, what you showed us. And people keep asking me, what does it cost to be on that? Nothing. This is your platform that you get to use. But Pete, for any of our agents watching right now, if they just loaded their current 10 listings up there and use that as their digital inspection and use that for the offer management system of that, you've just stepped forward as a modern agent incredibly. Yeah. And I think a consumer wants to know you are up to date. I'm paying the same money. Have you done your study or are you just a traditional agent who's going to fax it to me? I don't know. But I think a big difference of the agents that I've seen have got interested in technology, not just doing it because they have to.
And I think the interesting point that you made there too, Lee, was about the buyer's expectation of them sort of registering their interest and knowing that they're actually in the system and that they will be communicated with, because there's a lot of fear, particularly in a stock short market like we have today, of buyers that, they say, well, I've been through the property. Will the agent keep me up to speed? When they've actually had the opportunity to either declare their interest by following the property or follow a consistent process, either to register for a timed auction or a timed sale or something like that. I think that's a really, really sort of strong consumer outcome as well, because I think it'll improve that relationship. I just was curious about like sort of this whole phenomenon of chat GPT that's all come into the market. Have you had much sort of murmurs in the coalface around all of that?
We have, especially in property management. Writing property management ads is one of the most inspirational jobs you may never do. And the fact that they can load the criteria, the code of what they're after to get that back, the efficiencies of that. I think I saw property management take to it quicker because the agent's thinking, I've got my database of ads, but they're sounding the same and so forth. So a lot of people enjoying that technique of technology it's like when Grammarly came out. For all those that can sell but can't spell, you just have confidence that something's going over it, and Grammarly's no different. It's running those algorithms to say that's a better word than that word, and that word doesn't even exist. And you're like, okay, I'm getting better at this. I'm getting better at this. And as a communication tool, I think it's been taken to very fast.
Yeah, there's a number of different products that are kind of in their very early stages where, just to take what you described, you have a property address in, you throw in some attributes, and basically all of your marketing, from your website marketing to your signboard to your socials and everything else, is nicely, easily, very quickly put together. Still gives you the opportunity to edit it. But I think it's quite amazing the way that that's happening at the moment, because that's in that marketing space with the ChatGPT. But I guess the whole AI area, particularly the generative AI, if I've got that right, where it is artificial intelligence that includes machine learning, is really, really fascinating, because there's some big questions globally talking about how does this impact the way that agents do business, but probably even more importantly, how does that impact the way that consumers search for property? Yeah. So it's a very big phenomenon, particularly in the States. There's a lot of communication on that right at the moment.
Look at that search ability. It's like the digital buyer's agent, isn't it? Where someone could say, I only want weatherboard, Brunswick, single story, this side, this street, and I'm prepared to pay a premium for the exact match. 3-story brick and tile homes with pools and so forth. And the fact you could narrow it in, but Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, The portal doesn't really even have that searchability. It's going to be a machine-driven moment that can laser beam across all tech to say that's where it is.
Yeah, look, I think we all know the portals are smart enough and strong enough and got enough money to be able to sort of move into that space and take advantage of it. But whether they can move at the pace at which it's moving right now, Lee, I'm not too sure. But it's going to be a really, really interesting thing to watch, because the reality is, you look at the consumer expectation, they want to be able to, exactly that description that you said, look, I want to be able to have everything. I want to be able to be served up information that suits my criteria. I think that's going to be a really interesting place to watch. On the agent side of things, on the consumer expectations of agents, I'm sure you'd agree, faster response, less touch. They certainly don't want to have to repeat information. I know a lot of buyers these days are sort of saying, you've got my information already. And agents say, oh, I've just got to take it again. That becomes one of those pain point moments for buyers. There's a lack of consistency that buyers and sellers are probably looking for more consistency, certainly transparency. What's your sort of thoughts on that consumer experience?
To give it full perspective, imagine as a real estate agent, you went to board an international plane tomorrow and they were writing down your name as you got on.
Yeah.
Instead of boom, and you're thinking, are you sure you've got me? Like, if this goes down, will anyone know I was even on board? Everyone's had that experience when you're in a cafe and someone takes your order but writes nothing down. It comes back wrong. You're like, why didn't you just write it down?
Yeah.
Where the next generation of that is, I QR coded it myself. I ordered it myself. I know exactly what I'm getting and I paid for it. So the consumer does have huge confidence in digital, because digital won't hurt me, it'll record me. It doesn't have an opinion of me. It's just placing me and connecting me. So you look at these wonderful sales that we've been seeing happening where there's not a lot of people on the property, but the ones that are on there are the genuine real buyer. And a couple of the timed auctions piece, they have been getting moved forward, but everyone gets notified, versus nothing worse than the traditional real estate agent who says, no, it's definitely going to auction. 2 weeks later, they ring up and go, oh, just going to get my building report. Oh, no, we've sold that one.
Yeah.
What do you mean you sold it? Oh, yeah, you told me it was going to auction. Why have you discriminated me? And that's where an agent can hurt a human, because they made an emotional decision, but they didn't notify. And notifications have become a security for a lot of people that, okay, I've registered, I'll be notified, versus I missed out. And that's where digital has professional trust.
Yeah, because I guess if you're a buyer and you saw an agent was writing something down, versus you're able to scan a QR code, be able to declare your interest in the property, you know that you're inside of the system. So I agree with you around that. You feel protected. You also feel as a buyer that you've made your first step. So you've made your declaration. The agent can then communicate with you. From an agent perspective, at least all that information in one spot. So as you mentioned before, send out a message, you send it out to everyone. So you complete your obligation to your seller by making sure that you don't leave any stone unturned, because there'd be nothing worse finding out that a buyer was not communicated to if you were the seller. And we've probably heard plenty of stories about that. But I guess the thing about all that is that there's the technology that's available, right? And really the digital agent of the future should have access to that information, that process. Because as you said before, the industry hasn't really changed. Just the way that we do things is now easier, faster, more efficient. And I guess too, probably if you look at, most of our customers that are out in the field today, I mean, every single agent's got a computer in their hand, whether it's an Android phone or it's an iPhone or whatever it might be. We've got access to be able to do all these things. It's just a case of bringing it all together.
100%. And Pete, I'll just share a story of my own at the moment. I loaded a set of data up to a call company who's making some calls on my behalf, but I got a live dashboard of how many calls they've made, what the responses have been, who I need to follow up, who needs to speak to me urgently. But in real time, it's my list. It's an on behalf call of me. I'm seeing the notes. The fact I'm in the back of a cab and I can scroll through and live and say, I'm going to ring Pete Matthews myself and say hello. G'day, Pete, it's Lee. You were speaking to one of our team the other day and I just thought I'd follow through and say hello to you. That is efficiency and it's visible. And I think digital is about gaining visibility and the owner loves it. The owner loves seeing another office come in that's not where we thought. When you ring an owner to say, okay, we've had an offer, it's all in your voice or you. If you're calling after they've had the notification in real time, we both found out about it at the same time, no one can get angry at a system. You're coming in after that. But Pete, I've got to say, a lot of agents, and we knew this would happen, had this real weird reaction of, technology's trying to take our job and so forth. It's like, you've got to be kidding. You're working 7 days a week. We're trying to give you time back. So when 75 people just got notified of that knockout bid, how long would it take you to ring them on a Sunday to let them know there's been another offer? are, do you want to increase your own? It's about time our industry enjoyed these efficiencies and go home. It's been way too long, Pete, that it's 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, you can't switch off, versus the system's always on now. You don't have to be always on yourself. I really want to see that work-life harmony for our industry due to technology. Well, Pete, the first scene here today, I'm in here. You go back 4 years ago, there'd be a camera guy, a sound guy, somebody else costing 10 grand a day, versus with the tech, you learn it yourself. You got that efficiency, but you got that control that I'm not waiting for someone to do something for me. I can load those photos into Cell now, put a video explainer up, which is good marketing, and have it live myself in 5-10 minutes. You've got to be your own mechanic today, which is a really important thing.
Absolutely. There's no point just having tech. You've actually got to implement it. You've got to ensure that you're engaged with it and make it part of your process. So I'm sure that's a message that comes through in all of your training. You are the inventor, the author of the price update, which was a game changer for the industry, really, and also for our pitch product. Looking at that now, the whole suite of the platform, there's so many other things now that have been evolved as a result of some of the feedback that we've got from our customers, which we absolutely love, because that's where a lot of our ideas come from. You know, you've talked before about destination reports and using pitch as a destination report. We had a chat earlier about, you know, sort of using pitch for more detailed vendor reports. And what was really a great initiative, and in talking about this buyer and consumer experience, knowing that pretty much every buyer that's coming through probably either owns something else somewhere or may even own a property directly in your own marketplace. Having buyer reports through pitch is something that's in trial at the moment. And that came directly from the field. You know, customers saying, you know, look, it'd be great if you could do this. And we've been able to convert that into some practical tools.
You know, when I first saw pitch is a brilliant multimedia communication tool with digital connection and notifiers. And it was being used for that pre-listing kit and proposal. And then to see it as a lead generation tool where you think, wow, we could strip it back. So the price update is like the cheeseburger of the family. It's got the less layers. And that's the beauty of it. When you can say to a consumer, at the end of this phone call, I'm going to shoot you a link and it's got the surrounding sales of your property. I'll update it every 6 months for you just to keep you in the loop with the marketplace. You picked up in the dialogue there, not do you want one? I'm sending you one. Well, suddenly claiming 10, 20 doors a day has become the skill. And I'll say to agents, before I ask you how your week was, how many doors did we claim this week? That's all I want to know first up. I didn't get onto that. I've got nothing else to talk about, because if we're not claiming doors, we're going to end up locked. And right now, it's like when people say, oh, how do I get better fees? Get more doors. The more doors you got, the better fees you get, because it's not so desperate now that this is the only chance you've got. When you've got 15 potential sellers ready to come on the market because of your digital prospecting program, you won't take a lesser fee because I've got more coming in, versus if the only one you've got, that's all you're going to get. So that's been huge. But I think allowing people to use this as their digital passport for everything. So they're going to your text messages now and they can go through your reports, the progress report for the owner. We've had some great examples where some of our pitch users, God love them, have said, well, there's a proposal. That's everything we agreed to do. I'm now going to add week 1, week 2, week 3, and I'll put your metrics report in there, which might come from the CRM, but these are my comments and notes. These are my agent's recommendations, and this is the withdrawn interest from last week. But the fact you can see the owners opened it, I think, is another significant part. And if they've opened it 3 times today, good time to hop over there and get a face-to-face. That sort of notification for the agent has just been a game changer.
You also then put that into the buyer's field, where you've got a buyer who's declared their interest by scanning the QR code or following the property via the link. And then you can actually put them onto a summary report, essentially, that can provide them with information about what's happening in the property over that period of time, which no doubt not only a buyer would appreciate, but at the same time too, I think be a very, very good sort of example of what you could do as a representative of their property should they decide to sell. But I really appreciate you and I could, talk about this for a long, long time. Just a little bit of a summary. And before I even get into that, in the very early stage of technology, you've got sort of the innovators and the early adopters, and they kind of make up about 15% of the total market. Then you've got an early majority where there's about another 34% that join. So we're kind of in that phase now. They're kind of the early majority were called the pragmatists. They're the ones that are kind of looking at go, oh, should we do it? Should we not? And then you've got conservatives and skeptics at the end. And we're kind of moving through that phase in tech. I'm sure that you'd agree as that agents that are looking to take advantage of digital technologies to improve their process and efficiency, and also, of course, to provide better value and service to their customer, really should spend a bit more time investigating that, because the days of paper are well behind us. And I'm sure you'd agree, Lee, that even the hybrids that exist where you've got some people on digital and some people on paper, they're probably even those that are more at risk because they get assessed in one way and then they get disappointed in another. So I think that's another thing that some of our customers should think about. But just in summary, Lee, so what we're talking about is make sure you've got a process, make sure it's got a digital platform to work that through. It sounded very much like, as we talked about, sort of utilizing digital communications with claiming doors, using presentations and prospecting tools in the digital space, but also understanding that those same customers, those same prospects are going to be coming through your open home, and how you then engage with them, and kind of bookending all that together with a compliant transactional process, which, you've described the timed auctions, which is one of our methods of sale. It's going to be an interesting space, Lee. I think ChatGPT thing's going to be interesting. I'm going to have a lot more probably to say about that when we do our next webinar, just after I've spent some time in the States. But, getting the basics right is a really, really important thing. So summary comments from you, Lee. How would you like to close it out?
I think this is a really important time in our industry, and real estate's always going to be simple. It's about attract, engage, commit. That's all real estate is. But commit has now become that sign on glass moment, that sign authority, that I can bid online. And the consumer is enjoying that. So as a person who's a long-term career professional of this game, I think the next 5 years, Pete, are such an exciting time in this industry for those who are up to date. Get it on your learning menu to study the digital sale now. So when you need to do it, you're a ninja level at it versus, I've got to learn this quick and I don't know what I'm doing. This is what the consumer wants, and it's bringing in so much compliance naturally to our business where agents weren't getting paid. But get on board now, because the next 5 years is going to be the most exciting time in the real estate industry.
You remind me of something there, Lee. Like, you look at an agent, say 10 years ago, who wanted to come in to be an agent. It was their first foray. There wasn't really a very clear process. Most businesses couldn't say, look, this is how we transact real estate. This is what we do from the initial customer engagement to prospect right through to settlement of the sale. And today that process is there. It's digitized, and it literally is following that bouncing ball. What I fear for agents that have been in the market for some time that haven't embraced is that there'll be new agents coming through that's all they know. They pick it up and they run with it. And their ability to be able to move through those different levels that we know of agent performance will be a lot swifter if they've got a very, very strong, simple, repeatable process that they can follow. And I think we're going to see a big change in the dynamics of agents in the future. But to everyone watching, I really appreciate those that have tuned in today. Lee, thank you so much for your time. I know that you are a very, very hard guy to get a hold of.